Okay, so picture this, a robotic arm usually found in a car factory, now repurposed to capture some of the most dynamic, jaw-dropping shots in filmmaking. And it's all being controlled like a game, not a science experiment. Today, we are talking to the guy helping make this happen. Phil Ellingson is Director of Sales and Marketing at Sisu, a company that makes high-end cameras move faster, more accessible, and actually fun. He's got a background in advertising and tech, and now he's at the center of one of the most exciting shifts in the way we capture motion on screen. We're going to get into what these robotic arms actually do, why they're showing up more on virtual production stages, and how they're unlocking a whole new visual language for directors and DOPs. Welcome to the Starting Pixel podcast, the show that explores the creative edge of filmmaking, where emerging tech meets storytelling. From AI to visual production, robotic arms to digital humans, we're here to demystify the tools that are reshaping how moving image content gets made. I'm your host, Rob Chandler, and whether you're a director, producer, or just a curious creative, this is where tech becomes real. Welcome, Phil. How was that
Thank
as an
you.
intro?
Man, that's quite the intro. I said, can you give that script to my wife so every time I enter a room, she can read that off? I would appreciate that.
Well, yeah, she's going to do that. Oh, sure. So actually, this is we're going to kick off a little bit about you. So a bit of background about you, Mr. Ellingson. What do you do? Why are you doing it? How did you get to the heady heights of the Director of Sales and Marketing at CC?
That's a great question. So, yeah, I have a background in sales and marketing. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I have an undergrad and a master's in advertising, the latter coming from the University of Texas.
Right.
Which is, and now I live here in Austin, and I'm fascinated by what the technology can do. I tell people all the time, I literally have the best job that anyone can think of. I get to play with robots all day, and I work in the film industry. So those are two of the coolest industries, types of jobs that you can think of, and I mash them together, and that's my job every day. So it's pretty tough to beat my job.
Great to have that opinion of your own job, actually, to be able to go, this
Yeah.
is such a cool job to have.
Yeah.
I love it.
As long as you enjoy what you do and you love it,
Right.
more power to you.
Absolutely. Plenty of jobs in this world that you and I probably wouldn't look at, but there's people out there who absolutely love it.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a philosophical road we could go down. We're going to cut to a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more about robots.
Sounds good.
This episode is brought to you by More Than Wolf. Not sure where to start? How big a stage do you actually need? What about driving plates? Do you even need them? Is Unreal Engine necessary? Wait, what is Unreal Engine? You're thinking about virtual location scouting, but should you? How much is this all going to cost? And the big one, am I about to wreck my career by going the virtual production route? Yeah, there's lots of questions, and guessing your way through virtual production isn't the answer. That's where More Than Wolf comes in. We're an independent virtual production supervision studio, here to guide you from cradle to grave, whether you're just dipping your toes into VP or knee-deep in LED walls and camera tracking. We make sure you get exactly what you need. No overspending, no mishaps, just the right solution for your production. So if you need someone in your corner, choose More Than Wolf. Visit morethanwolf.com to find out more. More Than Wolf. Why film it any other way? All right, so let us paint a picture. Let's paint a picture of what a robot and filmmaking is to the uninitiated who's never seen it before.
Yeah. So in your intro, you talked about that. It's these big robotic arms that are typically seen in factories, whether it's automotive or otherwise. It's taking these arms and repurposing them for cinema use. So what we do is we take this robotic arm, we put a customized base on it, whether it's you wanted to put it on like track, like rails, or you just want it just like a standalone pedestal base, and you put a film camera on the end of it. And because a robot like this is perfectly repeatable, it will do once you program the robot to do a move, it will do the exact same move every single time. And because these robots can move extremely fast, up to 6 meters per second, you can do some really, really cool stuff with that. And so, kind of the three main things that a motion controlled robot are used for: one is just really fast moves. So, when you have a high speed camera like a Phantom or like an Ember Free Fly, and you're wanting to capture some like 1,000 frames per second, the camera needs to be moving really fast as well to be able to utilize that footage because you're capturing so many frames. And so, because of that, you need a high speed robot that can move the camera really, really quickly. And that's where you see like those like slow motion, like drink pours or something like that. So they're used a lot for that. It's also used for VFX. So anytime that you're layering like a same actor in a scene, it's usually done with a robot.
But yeah, okay. So just those those two use cases, are those typical in as much as, you know, the first one you mentioned was like a product shot,
Mm-hmm.
right? But with liquid. So typically bourbon coming out of a
Of a
bottle,
bottle. Yeah.
high speed camera kind of thing, and you just want to make it look as gorgeous as possible.
Yeah.
And then the VFX shot. So just talk us through that VFX shot again.
So that's where, like, let's say that you want an actor to be in a scene in multiple situations where, let's say it's a superhero movie, because
Right.
I don't know, popped into my head. Got a
Right.
multiplication man or something like that. He can multiply himself multiple times. And if you have a locked off camera, it's easy to do that. You just film a scene where he acts over on stage left, and then you film another cut with him acting on stage right, film another cut with
Right.
him in
Okay.
the center, and you can layer those. With the locked off camera, you can use anything. But if you have camera movement, to be able to layer those effectively and have it make sense and have it fit, you have to have the camera do the exact same, to the sub-millimeter accuracy of the exact same movement of the camera. And that's what a robot's used for.
So how, when you said accuracy there and you said sub-millimeter, so when I think of it, I look at it and there's this massive beast of a thing going on and there's a camera on it and it's and it's flying around. I think, well, it's not going to be exactly the same. It can't be exactly the same, surely.
It is. It is completely accurate up to half the width of a human hair. That's how accurate it is.
Right.
So, which I think it's like 0.04 millimeters is the accuracy level. Which you think about, these are building vehicles in
Right.
car manufacturing plants, so they have to be perfectly accurate. And so the way that we do that from the standpoint where we are is we make sure that the base is stable enough. We've got a lot of engineers that work here, and they've engineered, a base that is stable enough to make sure that we can move at these high speeds and still make sure that there's no movement and there's no variation in how the robot is. We
Got you.
can't have it shifting on the ground, even 2 millimeters off, because then the entire production.
Yeah. In my head, that's sort of the bit that was, if this thing's flying around the place, you could just imagine the
The
base just
torque.
shifting, just to
Yeah.
moving it. But okay.
There's a lot of weight that goes into these. They're about 900. Our most popular model is our C20, and it's the robot weighs about 907 kilos.
So yeah, that metric ton, effectively.
Yeah.
What's the logistics? What's the logistics of that? Actually, I mean, this is a really boring question, but it's the type of thing that gets me quite excited. Someone phones you up and says, "I want a robot."
Okay.
How's that work? Because it's a ton. It's not a small
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, so here's again, smart engineers.
Right.
So the robot actually has heavy duty casters that sit underneath the robot. So we can actually wheel it around, and the base of the robot is only 28 inches by 32 inches. So it'll actually fit through a standard doorway.
Right.
So we can roll it around into a studio, onto a lift gate of a truck or anything like that. No issues at all. And then when we get it in place, it has feet that we just drop down and secure it in place, so it doesn't shift around.
Got you. Other than those, so those two examples you gave, the sort of the slow-mo and something like where you want to do multiple plates.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that comes to my mind is driving.
So that does get into the next, or kind of the third time that motion control robots are typically used, is for really specific dynamic camera movements. So whether it is, moving through the window of a car, or orbiting around, or like we just did a Wendy's shoot where we did like a push in, and then like they wanted like an orbit up and over the actor, and then landing over here and then coming back around. To do something like that handheld or with another is very, very difficult. And so that's where a robot arm, we just program it to do this shot, and it's going to do that. And then it's all about just making sure that way the camera movement is exactly what the director wants to see. Then it's just now directing the talent to perform the way that the director wants, because the camera movement's locked in. We know that it's this cool, crazy dynamic shot. But that's the third kind of typical use case for a motion control robot.
We are going to go on to virtual production at the moment, but I am interested in the robot part of it as well. This thing is flying around the place, and I was just thinking to me, that is a health and safety issue.
So we actually have two things that we have in place. One is an enable switch. So we have a tablet that we use to do all the software programming on, that the robot operator just stands on set with his tablet. And on the bottom of a tablet is an enable switch. Think of it kind of like a dead man switch, where that has to be held down at all times, anytime the robot's going to be moving.
Got you.
So if he ever, let's say that, we're running the robot at crazy fast speeds, and PA walks in, all the robot operator has to do is just let go of that switch.
Got you.
And it's just going to stop right in place. Which is why, because we just did a shoot last year. Movie's actually fixing to come out in October, is the new Tron movie, where we had we're doing a robot shot with a probe lens that was about less than an inch away from Jared Leto's eye. And we were doing an orbit around his face. And so the reason why, because that was one of the shots that they had in the creative concepting, and they wanted to make sure that we were as safe as possible. So, but yes, they can move fast, but there's things that we've implemented to make sure that they are safe.
Maybe we'll get on to actually the virtual production side of it. I mentioned car driving plates. You don't have to put the thing on a low loader. It's all done. It's all repeatable. That's sort of where virtual production. I don't know. Actually, you tell me. Where's that usage for VP and robotic arms sort of come into?
It's a great question. So I was actually talking recently to a friend of mine he's done a lot of VFX work in the past. He now works for a company called Trailer Park Group out of LA. They do a lot of, it's a big VFX house. They do a lot of really, really cool projects. And the thing that he really loves about our robot is back when, the late 90s, 2000s, the photography aspect of filmmaking was beautiful. There's just incredible camera movements. Think about like The Matrix, what technology allowed us to do to get these like super cool shots and everything, which was amazing. But then we moved into, we have this new technology, it's virtual production, LED volumes. But the problem with that is the photography has gone back in time because of the limitations of the technology, meaning the frustum and the speed and the dynamic movements that we can get with the camera. It limits the capabilities of what we can do with the photography with the camera movements. So that's what's great about when you pair a robot with it, is because with our Sisu motion control robot, we have a feature called volume lock, which what that does is that actually locks in the robot to Unreal Engine, and it completely eliminates any delay between the robot and your network that's running Unreal Engine. Exactly.
Right.
So there's zero delay, latency. So you can get some fast, crazy, dynamic camera movements that you couldn't get without that. So, so being able to pair this new technology with this other new technology means that, okay, we have a lot more capabilities. Our creative mind can start to open up doors now again. We're not limited in what we can do with the camera movements.
How hard is it to do? You talked about an iPad, which is always a great thing for, big thumbs like me.
Yeah.
But you've picked up the phone. I'd like a robot, please. I mean, getting you to drop off a robot's relatively simple. Just need to, phone up your credit card and the thing turns up, right? But then what? What's that process, and where does the sort of the technology integrate with the creativity side of that? Who owns that? Where does that happen? How does that happen?
That's a great question. So here's where the magic is though. Here's where the magic is the standard motion control solution. The workflow is you have a director who tries to convey his vision to an engineer who then goes back to a computer and is types away coordinates on like a spreadsheet and like graphs and tries to figure out what that is going to be. Then he comes back onto set and they run the robot and they try to see if he achieved the director's vision. And if he doesn't, if they need to make changes to that, then he needs to leave the set, go back to his computers, type away some more graphs, more spreadsheets, trying to get things to. It's time consuming and it's terrible, and it takes the creative licensing out of the director and the DP's hands. So that's what we do different. Is because we have an iPad in one hand, and then the other hand is actually an HTC Vive controller.
Right.
With that HTC Vive, the robot operator is actually programming the robot like live with the director. They're setting the framing, and he never needs to leave the set. He's got everything that he needs in the palm of his hands. So the creative, we can even put that HTC Vive into the hands of the director and say, you set the framing that you want. And so we're setting up shots just the way that the directors and the DPs are used to.
So talk through that just a little bit more, in as much as what that Vive handset is. Is that literally like, I don't know, a Wii remote or what's the other one? They're holding it and they are controlling the arm and the pitch and the
That's
roll
exactly what it is.
and of
So
it in a 3D space. So they're sort
that's
of holding it
exactly
up.
what it is. So
Got
when
you.
they pull there's a trigger on the controller, and when they pull that trigger, it's like they're virtually grabbing the camera. And as they move their hand,
Got you.
the camera follows their hand motion. So all 6 degrees, like you said, it'll roll, it'll pan, it'll do everything that their hand is doing in a 1-to-1 ratio. So it makes it very simple. It's almost like you're virtually grabbing the camera, and you're like, you want to put the camera right here looking at Rob's face. All I've got to do is just move my hand like this, and the camera will follow me until the robot or the camera's looking right at Rob's face.
Got you. That sounds gleeful in itself. I
It
think
is very
I
gleeful.
just want to do that, just to do it. That sounds amazing. Where were we then? Yeah, we were back on VP, right? So
Yes.
let's go back to VP.
It's it is something that, like you said, you really need to see and get your hands on to really be able to believe it. And so that's why it is picking up, but it's been a slower process than I think any of us on our side, on the motion control side, want. But it is definitely picking up, absolutely. And that's what you're seeing more and more robots, whether it's a Sisu robot or other motion control robots. You're seeing more and more of them all over the place because they are being utilized a lot more in virtual production. And yeah, you talk about the glee. I mean, we are working with Texas A&M. It's a university here in Texas, and they have a big animation department that they're now turning into a virtual production department within the university. And so last summer, we did a big symposium with some of their students where they wrote their own scripts and did all of the Unreal programming themselves. And then when it came time to actually shoot their short films, we had a robot on set, and they knew about having a robot. They're like, okay, sure, we're going to have a robot on set. Sounds great. But it wasn't till they actually got on set and they started using the robot, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And then like I was saying, their creativity started to blossom because
Right.
they're like, oh, the shot that we were going to be where it was a girl climbing a ladder, and it was just going to be kind of like just um, a boom up following her climb the ladder. It's like, well, now we can do this boom up, and then we can do this like whip pan down. And so they're like, oh, cool. Okay, let's change the shot to do all these cool things. So because it's like you said, it's this aha, like, wow, I can do
Yeah.
so much more now.
Yeah. The bane of virtual production is the creativity, right?
Yes,
It's
it's
like,
true.
man, yeah, you can
Someone's
probably
got
do
to rein those creatives in a
rain.
little bit
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. What's the most creative thing you've seen it used for?
So that's what I love about what we do and the people that we work with is some of these creatives, they're like mad scientists. They're always thinking of like different creative new ways to do it. One of the neatest ones that I got to work on that was we got to work with Adam Savage on his YouTube show Tested, where instead of using the robot to shoot the production, we actually put a miniature spaceship on the end of the robot. and then we just had the
Okay.
camera on a slider. And with this, we did this at Orbital Studios, like I said, out in LA, and with an LED volume behind and everything, with like an outer space scene, and we had the robot kind of moving and articulating the way that the ship was going to be banking and moving through outer space, and then the camera was just on like a motorized slider. And so that was kind of like a cool way, different way to use the robot than put the camera on the robot and move it
Yeah, yeah.
along. It's kind of neat
Have you
though. It's pretty cool.
have you ever had two robots together?
Yes.
One with a camera and one holding a prop or something like
Oh
that?
yeah, we've done that a lot. We have a partner actually in the UK, out in Norwich,
Oh
out on
yeah.
the East Coast. Great lads out there. But
Well, you nailed that. You nailed it. You literally
thank
it was
you.
almost like being in the in the room with my cousin.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. But they have two robots. They have a larger one and a smaller one. They do that quite often, where they'll put like a product on the smaller one and have it be able to articulate the product with the larger one kind of like moving around it.
Right. That yeah. And then add in some virtual production LED
Yeah.
wall into that.
Yep.
Have you ever had an LED wall on a robotic arm as well?
An LED wall, no, but TVs, yes.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. I think that could be a thing. Right. Three. So you've got three robots all dancing around each other. One of them's holding the background, which is like the big TV. Then you've
Hmm.
got the prop, and then you've got that.
The camera.
Yeah. I told you, I did warn you. I did warn you.
I think we've got
What
something here, Rob.
what about trigger-based VFX, in-camera VFX? Tell us about that, because that's one of the things I think that is gleeful that I find, and it's the subtleties of those VFXs in actual fact that I find really interesting, like just leaf movement, just a little bit of air, just a vapor trail of an aeroplane going across the sky, a window slightly, something just moving in the background that can't be a plate, because it's also trigger based. So it can't either be a moving plate and it can't be a static photograph, but it can have VFX going on it. But the important thing about that is that it's trigger based. So we did a shoot once. Actually, it was for a drinks commercial, and there was a sun and a moon moving across, or animated to move across the sky in a few seconds. And then the camera
Mm-hmm.
sort of followed it, but it was they were on a dolly. They weren't using a robot. I know, right? If only they'd known. If
Missed
only they'd
out.
known. That what they also then did is that they had the backlight that was shining forward into the sort of the glass of the scotch. They had a couple of grips with rope, basically hauling it across the back to marry,
Mm.
right? So it wasn't, there was no trigger. It was like action, and then someone
Yeah.
pushed the space bar, and then they moved that, and it was like, yeah, that worked, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But it worked. It was brilliant. It was fine.
Yeah.
But none repeat, and they tried to repeat it. But obviously, if you needed it absolutely on the nail, everything would have needed to be trigger based.
Yeah.
So what's it? Have you come across that?
Oh, yeah, we do a lot of that, especially in product work, where you have the camera moving, and then as the camera is moving, you're triggering a turntable to turn. And then as the turntable is turning, it has um, it's also triggering the Unreal environment to also rotate as well. And then you're having something like a jet of water shooting at the bottle that's being turned on the turntable, and all that has to happen at the exact same time, or the exact right time for the shot to work. And so yeah, we do that a lot, where because our software, it's a timeline based software, and so we just say, like, when the camera gets to this point in its program, and at that, whether that's 1.75 seconds, then trigger the turntable to rotate at this speed, and then which will turn the environment. And then once it gets to 2.7 seconds, then trigger the water jet to squirt at the bottle. Yeah, we do that, a lot of
You
that
do
kind
that
of
all the
stuff. It's
time.
really neat. It's really cool though. It's really, really cool once it all comes together.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just sort of popped into my head. There can't be that many people who get that. Do you find that there's particular creatives or particular directors or particular
There is.
there's very, because it's a very unique, I suppose, once that glee has happened and you get it, and it's like, oh wow, I'm the specialist. I'm that guy or I'm that girl that they're going to call up because I know how to do it.
Yeah, it is. So there's a really famous guy out in New York. He doesn't have one of our robots. He has one of our competitors' robots, but he's an awesome guy. I really like him. His name's Steve Geralt. I'm not sure if you've heard of him,
I haven't,
but
so he's not that famous.
fair.
I will look it. I will look him up. I will look him up.
But that's what it's called visual engineering is
Right.
the subset. And so he's kind of the godfather, pioneer of this visual engineering. And that's something that we're really passionate about as well. Actually, I have a friend, he has a production company here in Austin called Loop Moco, and he's trying to, that's what his specialty is as well, is this visual engineering. And so he does a lot of that as well. And yeah, if you, producers know what needs to happen, and so they'll go to someone like Steve Geralt, or they'll go to Loop Moco and say, "You guys are the visual engineering guys. This is the shot that
Engineering.
I know. Look it up. It's cool too."
I think
They'll
I
be
want
like,
that job title.
"It's so cool."
Senior visual engineer.
So, and yeah, it's they'll reach out to those specialists and say, "This is what we want." And sometimes they have to build custom rigs because these guys are the people that are visual engineers. They're also typically mechanical or electrical engineers, and they're by education, and so they will take those tools and be able to say, "Okay, you want to do this with your hamburger. So let's figure out how to do that. What tools do I need to Frankenstein to make this happen?"
Yeah. There's a great guy on the WhatsApp at the Starting Pixel WhatsApp group called Andy. He does automated props. So basically, I
Yeah.
don't know if you come across him. So basically, if you push a button, or there's a speedo, or there's some interaction with a prop that he does, then that triggers a whole load of stuff, and he can get
Yeah.
that program to talk to Unreal. I imagine he can get it to talk quite easily to a robot as well. I must talk to him actually. He's on the podcast soon.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to watch that one because yeah, I think I've reached out to him because I want to figure out how we can work together because we can either trigger something to happen like a turntable or something else or a pneumatic device, or we can be triggered by some external device like one of Andy's fun gadgets, and all it is just an electrical impulse. That's all that we either accept or send out. It's just an electrical impulse.
Yeah. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all it is, Phil. It's it's just an electrical impulse.
Electric.
That's all it is. It's
That's
just a robot.
the engineers love it when I say stuff like that. It's no big deal.
It's like marketing, right? It's just colouring in. It's just colouring in, Phil. It's like sales. How hard's that? Just pick up the phone,
Yeah, pick up the phone, call somebody.
right?
I
Call
mean, I could
someone.
write an email. Do
What
you
are
need
you
me to write
doing?
an email for you?
What are you doing? You haven't done anything all day. Is that or something? So we're going to go back off to break, and then I think we're going to talk about actually sort of what people would need to know to get into it, all that kind of stuff, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. Oh, hello. It's a bit quiet in here without an ad, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe you want to reach filmmakers, producers, and creatives who are all about the latest innovations in film, TV, advertising, corporate content, or social media. Got a game-changing tool that saves time and money? A virtual production studio that no one's heard of, but hey, you've got free snacks. Or maybe you just want to remind everyone that you're the best brand out there. Well, this silence, it could be yours. Get in touch at startingpixel.com and let's fill this space with something a little bit more exciting. The Starting Pixel podcast. Why film it any other way? Welcome back, everyone. Yeah, the third act of it really is, I guess, where it's all going. Why someone sort of consider using, and what the blockers are as well, I guess, to someone using a camera, specifically, not a camera, a robot, specifically for virtual production as well. And those sort of use cases, if you were a producer or a director or a DOP who doesn't know anything about robots, probably B, doesn't know too much about virtual production. So what's sort of those blockers, and how do you normally navigate them?
The biggest thing for us is navigating preconceived ideas. That is probably, and just being honest, is our biggest hurdle because people are whether it is either in virtual production or with motion control robotics, is people don't understand or know, or they may have heard about it, and like the standing opinion of motion control is that it's slow, it takes forever, it's cumbersome, it's expensive. Like when we did the BSC Expo last year, we were talking to people about motion control like an overtime machine, right? And we're like, no, no, no. That's what everyone, like, it was like 3 or 4 people called it that, is they called it the
Overtime
overtime.
machine. I thought that was
Yeah.
my. I thought that was me.
No, that's
That's my
what your
stage
girlfriend
name.
calls you.
That's my stage name.
Your stage name. So that's what we're trying to eliminate, this preconceived motion that, or notion that, motion control is slow and cumbersome and takes and is expensive, because it doesn't have to be. It can be fast and dynamic on set, where typically it used to take, and it used to be, motion control used to be really, really slow and expensive, where productions used to only be able to get maybe 3 or 4 shots within an entire 10, 12 hour day. And that was it, because it would take so long to set up and program. But now we're typically getting 10 to 15 shots per day.
Right.
And so it's like this, it's different now. It's changed. This is what motion control is now. And so there's so much more that you can use it for other things more than just a motion control shot. So just quick story. We were on a shoot, but this is what happens when you bring a sales and marketing guy
Yeah, I know.
onto your podcast, this
It's last
story.
time.
Last time, now you're like, I want engineers. So we were on a shoot for a hamburger for Wendy's, or it was a chicken sandwich from Wendy's, and they brought us in to get a very specific motion control shot, and they had 5 shots that were motion control that were planned for the shoot day. We ended up with 8, because they saw how quick that it was compared to what they had used in the past. They're like, oh wow, it's gotten faster, it's gotten better. Like, one of the moves was just a simple push in. So they had hired a dolly, like a Fisher dolly, that we were inside a house. And so we were like, we're going to have to move the robot out of the way, move the Fisher dolly in, mount the camera on the dolly, do the push in, move the dolly back out of the way, bring the camera back, the robot back in. So as they're getting ready to move the robot out and bring the dolly in, they're like, the director just said, wait a minute, can't we just use the robot for that? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. So we ended up using the robot in place of the Fisher dolly, because it was actually faster to just use the robot than to have to change everything and bring in the dolly. So trying to change that perception of, no, it's slow and expensive and we can't use that.
That's a big, I guess, thing for virtual production as well,
Exactly.
right? There's a lot.
It's the exact same.
Perception. Perception
Yep.
and it's moving so quickly that if someone had an experience months ago, long month, 10, 20 months ago, that was a long time ago. Things have just changed
Changed a lot since
so
then.
rapidly, just in months.
Yep.
How do you normally? Because what you've actually sort of said is a traditional, I guess, creative process of actually having a solution on set and talking through it, but you're on set, right? It's like, the dolly's been ordered, it's there, sitting there, and it's like, oh no, we could have done this, we could have done, we're going to do it this way. So is there a way?
That's a very tricky kind of way to navigate, because you never want to go to the director and say, but excuse me, Mr. Director, we can actually
Right?
do that for you. He'll be like, get off my set. So you don't want to do that. Thankfully, we were working with a DP who was able to kind of guide the director, who's somewhat familiar with our technology, and was like, wait, let's just do that. And so you want to, so what we try to do is we try to do a lot of stuff as part of the pre-production, to be involved in that, to say like, look, this is your shot list for the day, this is what we can do. And then, especially once a director can see how quickly we can move on set,
Yeah.
that's when they're like, oh, okay. Like, that's what happened with us on Tron. They originally flew us out to, I think it was 5 shots for the entire movie that they wanted us on. We ended up getting about 15 shots, because the director was like, oh, it's like you said, trying to rein in a creative. He was like, oh, okay, this shot here that I was originally going to do, now we can do it this way
This
here.
way.
And so it's just trying to be like, and just when they come up and say like, can we do that? Yes.
Yeah, it's soft
Absolutely.
skills, knowing what you can and you can't as well, right? And you don't want to overburden. The other thing is you don't want to overburden creatives with too much technical engineering speak as well. That's the big challenge as well, isn't it? It's going too in depth, talking about and coming out blurbing a bunch of acronyms and stuff.
Well, according to the inverse kinematics of
Right.
It's the what? No.
Yeah. Get off my set. What do you think the future is? I've written down robot dogs with cameras on them, right? Stick a camera on that. Come on, Phil.
Well,
Where's my robot? Where's my robot cam dog?
You're actually not too far off.
Right.
One thing, we actually just announced a new product, which is actually it'll be launching at the end of this year. It actually takes one of those robot arms that go on a robot dog,
Okay.
and which is about 800 centimeters, 80 centimeters. Doing my conversion, my metric conversion wrong. So it's just under a meter, so about 80 centimeters, and we're that you can just put your iPhone on the end of, that content creators or podcasters can use to get dynamic camera movements at a much smaller space, much easier to use, lighter weight, much lower price point, that can be used for a much broader consumer market.
Got you. Well, that's
So
sort of,
that's
yeah,
kind of a cool thing.
right. That's where the content, there's going to be, that's the content explosion. Well, it's content's been exploding since 2000, but it's not gonna slow down anytime soon, especially with technology coming out. But I still want to see a robot dog with a camera on it. That's your job, please.
All
I
right,
want to see that.
I'll work on that.
That'd be
I'll
quite
work on
pretty cool,
that.
actually, because you might have been able to actually. I mean, it's not virtual production related, but you might have actually been able to do really long one shots with a robot dog
The
with
problem
a
with the
camera on it.
robot dog is they don't move smoothly. It's going to look like this.
Don't put blockers in.
I want solutions, Phil. I want
Right.
solutions.
No, I don't need that. What about AI? What about AI? What about VR? How's that?
So VR itself is, because we actually looked at that, because when we recently started using the HTC Vive like controller, like I was saying, which is a VR headset or handset, and so we talked about, should we actually use the whole VR goggles? But I mean, let's be honest. One, safety. I don't want someone with like VR goggles on set moving a 1,000-pound robot around. And so and quite frankly, that you would just look silly on set with VR goggles going around. It just wouldn't be great. So, but we have the backbones of the technology to be able to say, okay, in the future, these more of like the augmented reality glasses that like
Right.
Google and Microsoft and everyone are coming out with, Apple, can we use that technology now? And as I'm moving the robot, I'm actually visualizing in actual 3D space what the path of the robot is going to be. Can I do that? Can I visualize what the 3D environment is going to be that we're programming in Unreal Engine? Can I do all that in using these augmented reality glasses? So I'm very, very interested about that.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't touch too much on the green screen side of things, which is the traditional, more of a VFX pipeline. Even as you say, you can use it with virtual production and have camera replacements and or
Mm-hmm.
digital cameras within the environment. Blah blah blah. And I could imagine that from a previs or even I guess even a location viz, location scouting kind of
Mm-hmm.
way as well. You might be able to move that. That might be an interesting ability for the director to be able to do those visualize it in a 3D environment, and then being able to control, even with the handsets, right? So they're in a 3D environment and looking around, and they're in the virtual set, and then having a separate window that they can see, which they can then manipulate the camera or the robot arm for previs. Which, I mean, you could then give it to a camera operator and go, this is, again, there's the shot. And because if you wanted to have that traditional feel to it and not have the robot
Robotic.
feel, robotic
Yeah.
feel, and all that kind of stuff. Cool. So you're going to come up with the robot dog for me, and
Robot
we're
dog.
good. I want it to be called Robbie the Robot, please.
Robbie the Robot. Done.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll talk to Valen. He's the
yeah.
director of our engineering efforts. Will next week work for you?
Next week. Brilliant.
Done.
So what's next for you? What's next for Sisu? What's going on? Are you up to anything? Have you written a book recently?
No, I honestly, I want to write a screenplay about my mom. I was just up in Canada visiting my parents, but I do want to not necessarily write a book, but I want to write a screenplay about my mom. She's lived a very fascinating life, and so which I'm not being like,
You
oh,
weren't a
my mom's so
disappointment. You
wonderful.
weren't a disappointment, were you, Phil?
Maybe a little bit, but maybe this is how
I'm
I'm making
sure.
up for it. No.
Right.
Well, she was born in Germany at the end of the war and
Right.
was a refugee.
That sounds cool. Are you coming over to London? I can't remember if you said you're going to come over to Media Production Tech Show or IBC
Probably
and
not.
right.
We did BSC Expo back in February. We'll probably do the IBC show in Amsterdam. I will say I was blown away by everyone in Amsterdam. Like everyone is tall and attractive.
I have a lot of time for the Dutch. as I do for the Germans and the French and the Spanish and the Italians and a lot of other people as well. Actually, yeah, they're an awesome bunch, they're incredibly frank, which I absolutely adore. They will tell you it. They just tell
Yes,
you it. They
very
will.
different than the British.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a breath of fresh air talking to working. I work with a lot of Dutch people. They're
Okay.
brilliant. Actually, we have a question.
Okay.
So Emir has asked, is there any way to hang robot arms to the ceiling truss to save space on stage? Over to you, Phil. Come on.
Believe it or not, that is not the first time I've been asked that question. We actually, at least 3 or 4 times a year, we get asked that question. It is possible. So yeah, I'll just say it is possible. And if you really want to, it isn't something that is just, yeah, let's just do it. Let's go hang it up for this production. We would need to do some engineering on our side, but
Right.
it is absolutely a possibility.
So I guess it's either an install or it's sort of a almost, yeah, I mean, it's quite a big, wouldn't be a small thing to do unless of course I guess you get a lot of requests and then you come out with a specific product called the upside down robot arm.
The upside
I guess
downer.
the upside downer. Cool. Hope that answers, Emir, your question. So it's possible. That's all you're getting.
Yes.
Phone Phil. Phone Phil for anything else. Brilliant, Phil. Cool. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully, we'll catch up soon when you're in London or Amsterdam. Good news is next week, Andy Harris from the Automation Film Props people, he's going to be on.
Cool.
And
Yay.
knowing Andy, because he's a mad as a hatter, he will be doing things. We will be demoing, I am sure, and pushing buttons. So if you're able to make it, it's a pleasure, always a pleasure to talk to you. Never a chore. Thank you for my hat.
You as well. It was great talking to you. Thanks, Rob. All right. Cheers.